What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my builds guide and unit review of our latest Ranger battle unit Murdock. I'll also be going over the arena matchups that he can have because he's definitely a pretty potent arena score stick because of being a 195 BST axe armor unit. So unlike a lot of the armor units that we get in the Grail pool, he actually has a preferred weapon, which is really good. So Wyvern Hatchet is a 16 might preferred weapon with distant counter built in, and it also provides him with +3 defense. So having a distant counter weapon can definitely help him function as a far safe tank. And the other part of the weapon is always active in the enemy phase or in the player phase. If you want it to be active, then the foe's HP should be at or above 75%. So he's able to debuff the opponent for -6 attack and defense debuff, and then further debuff the opponent based on the attack debuff that they have present on them. If they have no attack debuff on them, then he can debuff them by -7 attack in the combat. So it's a bit reminiscent of the tier 4 seal skills in that way, and you basically want to run him with allies that don't really debuff the opponent's attack, because if they have any kind of debuff neutralization or any kind of unity skill, then the attack debuff can obviously work against you, and you're not really going to be getting the attack debuff from Murdock's weapon even further. And then finally, he can get the guaranteed follow-up attack with this weapon, which is really helpful because you can just run Special Fighter or Hardy Fighter in a slot bay and function well with it. And having a guaranteed follow-up attack also means that he has a bit better player phase than most of the armor units, which don't really have any kind of guaranteed follow-up attack. So this weapon is definitely pretty solid for a free-to-play armor unit instead of having none. And his stats also go really well with this weapon because he doesn't really have too unnecessary amount of speed. He has a pretty good min-max stat line where he has got 35 resistance and 45 defense. And then he has got attack super boon and also speed super boon, but the speed super boon is definitely irrelevant. Attack super boon is mainly the one that people are going to be picking, and if you're going to be ascending an asset, then ascending his resistance is definitely helpful because he already has pretty high amounts of defense. He also comes with attack defense ideal 3 at 4-star and special fighter 3 at 5-star. So this is really helpful if you want to fodder off Winter Black Knight or any kind of unit in the future who comes with special fighter 4 and another premium skill. So I'm really happy that this is present in the Grail pool and they're finally putting these older fighter skills. So he can be really useful as a fodder because of having special fighter, and special fighter as it is a pretty good skill for him with his Wyvern Hatchet. So it can function as a really good budget skill for him as well. So you can compare him to another axe armor that we did get a bit earlier this year, and that is Ludwig. So he completely blows Ludwig out of the water because Ludwig does have a lot less resistance and also has a bit awkward speed, which doesn't really do too much. And obviously Murdock does have a preferred weapon, so Murdock is going to be a better investment because of those things. And even though this is not the same weapon type, we can still compare him to the other lance armors that we have got in this generation. So we have got Vigard and Cervantes. And if you look at Murdock's stat spread, then again, he does have a pretty optimized stat spread, having that higher resistance, which makes him function as a pretty good far safe tank with that distant counter Wyvern Hatchet of his. And Cervantes and Vigard are going to be needing Arcane Xiang as additional investment if you do want to have a better weapon for them. So that is not going to be the case for Murdock, and he can be a bit cheaper to build because of that fact. Both Murdock and Vigard actually scored the same in arena at 200 BST. Vigard just needs his defense super boon, and Murdock, because of having a preferred weapon, can actually score 200 BST in arena if you do run 300 SP passives. So that is really good for the scoring aspect. So overall, I would say that Murdock is an amazing free-to-play axe armor that we've got with this really good distant counter Wyvern Hatchet, and he can function as a good far safe tank because of it, and he doesn't really need to run distant counter in his slot A. He can just run some other slot A skills, and he does have the resistance to tank a lot of the mages, which is also helpful. And his main role is definitely going to be like an arena score stick for many free-to-play players because he can function there competitively and actually tank some of the enemies as well, instead of just being an armor unit who cannot really do too much. So at least he can do that and score like a 200 BST unit with the use of 300 SP passives. And he can also deal with stuff like plus into a dagger, plus the ninja Korans, and many of the threats, as you'll see later on in the build section, as I do have the arena matchups. But still, many people might not want to invest into him because he doesn't really have -1 special cooldown, so he cannot spam stuff like Armored Beacon or like Bonfires. And if you have better far saves than him, then you might not really have much incentive to invest into Murdock. And by the time Murdock is going to be in the Grail shop, we're going to be really close to the next BST bump with Chooser Legend 7, in August. So the infantry units with preferred weapons will be able to score as much as Murdock for the arena usage. So if you wait a couple of months before the investment, you could try and see and scout if you do get any of those units that fit the criteria. So having the infantry mobility would help, definitely, because armor mobility is a huge detriment. Though it's a bit better if you do have guidance for now or anything to help with the mobility. That would be definitely really helpful, but he will still die to a lot of the common threats, especially the red ones like Legend Hinoka, Legend Yuri, and Duochrome, of course, in arena. So you have to watch out for those matchups as they are really horrible, and those units are fairly common in arena. If you're going to be building up Murdock on a budget, then you can simply give him swap and drive attack. Special Fighter is already pretty good with his Wyvern Hatchet, and you can just use Ignis as a special, and Armored Boots could be an option, especially for limited hero battles in Arena Assault, because Murdock can actually double in the player phase as well with his Wyvern Hatchet, so that does help on a budget. But if you're going to be investing a bit more into him, and if you're going to be plus and merging him, then you can certainly use the Henriette Manual from the Divine Codes and provide him attack resistance 4 save and distant defense 4 at the same time. Now, if you don't really have access to Special Fighter 4, that is completely fine. You can just run as default Special Fighter 3 and you should be doing fine. It's just that you're not going to be getting the healing, but you can just run Aether instead. So Ignis is going to be a good special to be run on this kind of Murdock with his high defense. And you can definitely opt for the attack super boon if you're going to be spending any kind of trade fruits on him. If you're going to be investing even more into him, then I would say that Armored Beacon is going to be the best special that you can give to him. Even though he doesn't really have -1 special cooldown and is not going to be able to retaliate back with it, it is mainly useful here for facing the pre-charged specials of the ranged enemies. And Armored Beacon is still going to be activating against those specials from the ranged units. So that's why it could be run, and you can just run Vengeful Fighter 4 at the same time when you can get Armored Beacon from Young Hector. And even though there is a bit of overlap with Vengeful Fighter 4 and his Wyvern Hatchet with the auto follow-up, the main reason why you're running Vengeful Fighter is to increase the attack debuffs that you can do in the combat. And Vengeful Fighter also gives you the follow-up negation, which is really helpful, and also provides you with the breath effect. So all of those things are the reason to run Vengeful Fighter, even though there's a bit of overlap with his weapon. And Defense Res Unity can be a fantastic option for him, as he's a pretty bulky unit, and especially if you run him with Legendary Male Robin, then he can make use of Grand Strategy and stack even more stats with this Unity skill. So that is the max investment Murdock if you're a big fan of him and you want to go all the way through. Even though Murdock has got a distant counter weapon, he can still function as a near save tank if that's something you're more interested in, instead of running as a far save, and if you have plenty of far saves already. So even though like the distant counter is a bit wasted here, still he can shred the attack of the enemy by quite a lot. And again, Vengeful Fighter 4 is useful for all of the things which I mentioned before. And Vengeful Fighter 4 is still useful because of the things that I mentioned before. And Sturdy Stance is going to be giving you the guard effect, which is helpful against many of the null follow-up enemies, which are still going to be doubling him. And near save is also an option that you can run on a high defense unit like him. But of course, far saving does come a bit naturally to him, as you don't really have to use any kind of distant counter slotty skills. And if you do build him up at +10 merge, then he can also be used in Summoner Duels as a far save tank with Hardy Fighter and Sacred Cowl. Now, he's going to be dying to the pre-charged Deadeyes of Duochrome still, but it could still be run so that you can get the damage reduction against many of the pre-charged specials like Lethality, for example, from Yuri and stuff like that. So Hardy Fighter is a pretty nice skill because he already gets the auto follow-up from his weapon, so you're not going to be missing out on too much if you don't run something like Vengeful Fighter. And Hardy Fighter is especially useful with Sacred Cowl in Summoner Duels, where survival matters a lot than just killing the opponents. So that is an option for the competitive game mode. Speaking of competitive game modes, he's by far going to be used the most in Arena as a score stick. And this is the Arena build which you can run, so you can just give him any kind of rally skill, and Aether is going to be the special that you can run, which is not really all that hard to get. You can get Distant Defense 4 and Far Save from Henriette Combat Manual, but for him to score like a 200 BST unit in Arena, he will be needing a tier 4 slot B skill, and with this build, Special Fighter 4 is the best one. But if you cannot have access to it, then you can still just give him any kind of other tier 4 slot B skill or 300 SP passive, so that he can work it out and score like a 200 BST unit. Because from what I've calculated, Special Fighter 4 is the best for this kind of build, but still it doesn't really change the matchup so much that without Special Fighter 4, like he's just going to be dying or anything like that. So yeah, for scoring at his max potential, he will be needing that 300 SP passive in his slot B. So that is going to be needed. And here are the matchups with this build. So as you can see, he can clearly tank many of the common threats like Ninja Lin, Duo Dagger, and Ninja Korin and Plus and Merge. He can also tank a unit like Legendary Lilina as long as you're taking the AoE hit from some other unit who Murdock is far saving. So that ally could be just one space away from Murdock and take the AoE hit from Lilina, and then Murdock could come in with his far save and take on Lilina's in-combat damage after the AoE hit and survive and kill her back. So these are pretty decent matchups against many of the blue and green units like Duo Dagger and Ninja Korin, which are seen quite a lot at Plus and Merge. But keep in mind that you're going to be dying very easily to stuff like Legendary Hinoka, who will just nuke you to Kingdom Come. So you have to watch out for those kinds of red threats. And obviously, units like Windsweep, Legendary Male Pilot is also going to be annoying because he can just attack you and Murdock is not going to be able to counterattack. Legendary Male Robin is pretty bulky and he can also kill Murdock back, and so can Legendary Celica and even an older unit like Legendary Micaiah because of the armor effective damage. And of course, you're going to be dying to red units like Legendary Veronica and Duo Chrom. And even Duo Asker is a bit of a problem because of how common he is and how hard he can hit with his pre-charge special. And he is also really bulky, so he's not going to be dying that easily. Murdock's final build is his max performance build with Armored Beacon in Arena with Vengeful Fighter 4. So again, Vengeful Fighter 4 is used here for the attack debuff and also for the breath effect that you can get. And you're going to be missing out on the healing from Special Fighter, but it's still a superior option to Special Fighter in my opinion, just because of the attack debuff that you can get. And even though he doesn't have minus on special cooldown, Armored Beacon is still, the best special, like I said, for him, because it is going to be triggered whenever you face any kind of specials from ranged enemies. So this is especially useful in Arena because you're going to be facing Legendary Veronicas and Duo Askers and Legendary Male Pilots who can all trigger their specials very, very easily. So even though you cannot retaliate back with Armored Beacon, it is still going to be doing its job with the damage reduction against those ranged specials. And Armored Beacon is not pierceable by Deadeye, Lethality, Sublime Heaven, or Enclosure. So that damage reduction is really helpful, and this is actually helpful to the point where he can actually survive a plus 10 Legendary Veronica with attack and speed ascended and, live to tell the tale and actually kill her back. So the highlighted matchups are the ones which change a lot with Armored Beacon and the Summoner support. I don't even have the Resistance Ascended asset in this calc, but obviously that is going to be helping even further. So living Legendary Veronica as a green unit is nothing short of impressive in my opinion, and it is really helpful because she's one of the more common annoying units you can face because of the Hero Rises event that we had and how she was a unit which a lot of people plussed and merged. So yeah, Murdock being able to kill plus and Legendary Veronica is totally worth the Armored Beacon in my opinion. And he can also beat the Legendary Male Robin and also Legendary Celica and Legendary Micaiah. And even though he doesn't really win outright against Legendary Male Violet or Duo Asker, as you can see, his matchup is a lot better now compared to the Special Fighter build which I showed before. And he can actually tank Duo Asker pretty comfortably and kill him in like 2 rounds. So that is really good, but he's still going to be dying to the red threats like pre-charged Duo Chrom with Deadeye and Legendary Yuri and also Legendary Hinoka. So Armored Beacon doesn't really help you in that regard against these red units, but it certainly does help you against Legendary Veronica and some of the other matchups which I mentioned here, and also against A+ and Duo Asker, which is definitely really helpful. So I hope that these arena matchup calcs can make it a bit easier for you to invest into Murdock and for you to decide if you want to invest into him or not, because even though he can perform really good, the armor mobility is still going to be an issue. So make sure you've got something like Ground Orders or Guidance 4 to help you with that. And a Flying Dancer goes a long way in helping you with the arena game mode, honestly, for all things considered. So make sure to share this video with your friends if they're thinking of building up Murdock. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously. And if you really enjoyed, you can always support me directly by using super thanks down below or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more free videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube set boxes are about as functional as Ludwig after seeing Murdock. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.